Well, after a week off, we are back and have plenty to discuss. So we're going to be going over all the events and action from Nashville Super Speedway. Also be reviewing my race weekend with the SRX series in Pensacola, Florida. And we even have some silly season news to break down and look over. And it all starts now on this episode of 3 Wide. Now, as you know, I did not release a new episode last week. I went to the SRX race Saturday in Pensacola at Five Flags Speedway. After I got home, really don't know what hit me, but it kind of took me out for most of last week, just mainly recovering. But I tried to get a new episode recorded, just could not get it done. So this week, we're going to go over I'm going to go over how it went over at the SRX race in Pensacola. I tried to get an early start. My plan was to leave around 8 and get to the track since I was able to obtain a media pass, try to get in the infield as much as I could, get as much content as I can. But unfortunately, due to some traffic, they had shut off a good section of I-10. I was unable to make it as early as I was planning. So that put me behind a little bit and kind of took me off schedule. And really spent most of the day just trying to learn where I could go, where I couldn't go, what to record, what not to record. Just trying to stay out of the limelight, kind of stay behind the curtain and just observe, learn, get as much as I could. And let me tell you, I had a blast. Got there, it was close probably to 12 o'clock. Five Flags, it was easy parking, getting in there. Go straight to the office. They got me, my armbands, everything I needed to get in the track. And next thing I knew, I'm walking across Five Flags Speedway. And it's my first time in the infield of a track in that capacity. And, just as I said, as a fan, growing up a fan of this sport, as soon as I cross the track, there's, Greg Biffle. And, I see Ryan Hunter-Ray walking around, Tony Kanaan signing autographs. And it was just walking into a world I never expected that I'd be able to, so I was very fortunate in that. Very thankful to Five Flags Speedway for giving me that opportunity. And it was hot. I got to tell you, that was probably, I grew up working on a farm, working here, South Alabama. You're used to heat, you're used to humidity, but I have never experienced heat, at least in my recent memory, quite like that. They had a modified race before the SRX event, so they did qualifying and all for that. And being able to walk around, see these guys work on their cars, these smaller guys getting the chance to race in front of the big series, it was pretty cool. In the field was former truck driver Chad Chaffin. He was there, and I watched most of that race. Before that race started, I did step back out to my vehicle, try to get some AC going on me. This was around, between 3 and 5 was probably the hottest part of the day. So make my way to the track, watch that race, was able to partake in the driver's meeting and, standing there, right there with Bill Elliott and Tony Stewart right in front of me. Tony Uri Jr. was in there. Helio Castroneves, who was a late addition to the race, was there. And like I said, most of the time I was just sitting there just in disbelief in the position I was in. And as I said, trying to snap pictures, take video as much as I could. By the time the main event rolled around, the crowd had built up. I probably wouldn't label it a sellout, but it was pretty daggum close to it. And, to stand around and see, how the national broadcasting side of it, seeing Matt Yoakum run around and reporting on things, Willie T. Ribbs, it was really cool. The race itself was very interesting. There was a lot of hard racing. Bubba Pollard was in the field, and through driver intros, you could tell he was kind of the fan favorite. Everybody was pulling for him to show out amongst these, superstars, and he really did. He held his own against them. He, had hard battles with Ryan Newman. That was probably the funnest part to watch on the track, was the battle between those two, because how Ryan, he's known for being a tough guy to pass, being aggressive, and Bubba's no stranger to that either. He can race hard. That's all he does is race these short tracks. So it was just great to just kind of go to one corner, sit and watch them enter into it and battling. And then when they had, after the 2 12-minute stages, they come in for a break, and these drivers came out, and they just looked already just beat and exhausted from this heat. Ryan Newman especially, they were trying to cool him off as best he could. Tony looked, really heated up, as well as, Paul Tracy. So they mostly spent the break just trying to get cooled off as much as they could, because they knew they had this 75-lap main event coming up. And from there on, I was really surprised, especially in the main event. I mean, Helio, he just kind of took advantage of the battle going on behind him with Newman and Pollard, and just kind of made that race his own. Had plenty of a lead to take the checkered flag. But everybody's attention, even you could look up in the crowd and see they were watching Bubba battling with Newman. So Bubba Pollard, he comes away with a podium finish with Newman and Helio getting the win. As soon as the checkered flag fell, I was there on pit road up against the wall. Didn't really know what to do next, where to go. And so they lifted up, the thing on the track where media started running out there. And I said, well, heck, I'm just going to go myself. I guess I'm allowed to do this. So I run out there, get on the other side of the car, start doing, Helio jumps out of the car, in which he's just a ball of energy. It seems like any time. He goes immediately to the fence, starts climbing up the fence. I start snapping pictures, doing video. I was able to catch the checkered flag from the flag stand and kind of hand it off, just give it right there to Helio, and watch him do his interview. Was able to snap some pictures with him on the podium. And at that point, I was pretty beat myself. I had a real bad migraine there towards the end. But so I took a few more pictures, headed out. And I mean, it was just an incredible experience. I didn't feel the greatest, but still just, when you got all this going around you in the moment, I wasn't paying any attention to that. And once again, just thank you to Five Flags Speedway for giving me that opportunity to go in there. SRX as well. It was definitely an amazing experience. One I hope to, be a part of again in, not just SRX, but I would love to do this on the, to get into the NASCAR side of it as well. Of course, that's what I'm here for. So I felt like, took a big step that direction. And, and I want to also give a big thank you to Daniel Vining with Pixelated Speed. He was out there, photographing. He was all over that track from, he was there before I was, and he was there after I left. And, just snapping pictures and doing an incredible job. He kind of let me tag along. I was able to talk with him, kind of get some information off him, get some knowledge from him, watch what he's doing, learn from him. And so I greatly appreciate him taking that time, to deal with me mainly, because I had no clue what I was doing. And so it was an amazing experience. Like I said, hope to do it again, whether it's back with Five Flags at the Snowball Derby or possibly here in the near future, getting to a NASCAR race and getting on that side of things. Definitely feel like it's a step in the right direction for this show. And as I said, starting a YouTube channel, working on editing that video. Y'all be patient, and I will get it out just as soon as I have it completed. So kicking off the race weekend in Music City was the Truck Series Friday night. And it was really a 2-horse race, all race. You had Ryan Preece and Zane Smith were the two dominant trucks. They led 144 of the 150 laps in the race. Each driver won stage 1 and 2. Zane won stage 1 with Ryan Preece second. Stage 2 went to Ryan Preece with Zane finishing second in that one. So those two drivers were, by far the class of the field. There was a big wreck with 24 laps to go that kind of had some playoff implications for the series. You had Matt DiBenedetto, Corey Heim, and Grant Enfinger, who were going 3 wide down the back straightaway. Ty Majeski, he gets a run on them down the back straightaway, and going into turn 3 and 4 decides to make it 4 wide, which, is way too much going into any corner, any track. So when they went 4 wide, there was no room. Matt, he ran pretty much up into Corey and Grant. It was a hard hit for all 3 drivers. Out of all 3, Matt was the only one able to drive away even though his night was done. And all three drivers were running pretty well in the top 10 at the edge of the top 5. Matt was 6th, Corey 7th, and Grant 8th. So they each had good runs going. You got Matt, who's trying to make it in on points. Grant as well, just trying to keep a safe spot for a playoff position as well. And they got taken out late in the going. I didn't see a TV interview with Matt, after the race or after the incident. They did interview, I saw Grant and Corey. Matt, he was not happy. He did a interview with, I saw Bob Pockris, that came out post-race. He wasn't happy with it. He doesn't know what some drivers are thinking, saying some drivers in the field, they race with such disrespect. And they were asked, they asked him, does he go talk to him? Does he go talk to Ty Majeski? And he said, basically you can't talk to some of these drivers. You have to either just threaten them or just go out and wreck them. Basically race them the way that you've been raced. And, that's kind of been the status quo for the Truck Series, at least the past couple of years. There's a lot of young drivers, and even some of the veterans, they really drive aggressively, over-aggressively, causing a bunch of wrecks, a bunch of torn up equipment. And it's kind of taken the wind out of the sails of this series. Used to it was a big bright spot to watch the trucks in action, but here lately, most weeks it's mostly a wreck fest and who can just survive not getting spun out. And with that wreck, it led to another incident on the ensuing restart. Haley Deegan, she had worked her way up to 11th, was having a good solid run all night, but had been running pretty strong in the top 15. She got spun just past the start-finish line, had contact from behind from Max, and I may be saying his last name wrong, Gutierrez. He, it seemed like he was trying to square up his truck behind her. She kind of ducked out of line on the inside lane going into turn 1, and it's almost like he tried to get his truck back straight behind her to kind of give her a push into the corner to help give her some momentum, and just misjudged it. It looked like when he swapped down, he actually was further ahead or closer to a rear bumper than I don't know if he realized. And it just sent her loose and sent her straight up into another truck and into the wall. And effectively ended her night. Listening to they played some of the radio on the TV. Max said he believed that she let off the gas, in which that's how he made contact with her. Overall, if anything, you could chalk it up to probably a poor decision by Max, just inexperience. I don't know why he would make a move like that at the end, especially when you got such a solid run going. But he saw an opportunity, took it, and unfortunately ended Haley's night early. Again, having a good, strong run, and it just was not meant to be to show up in the finishing results. And we wound up getting late charge towards the end of the race. Ryan Preece, he was leading, looking to repeat his win from last year at Nashville. And you had Zane Smith and Carson Hocevar behind them, and they made an amazing, late charge to the front in the last handful of laps. They were really coming with some steam. I believe they were somewhere a little over a second behind, and by the end of it, they were, within sight, maybe 2/10 behind them. But ultimately, wasn't enough. Ryan Preece able to get it done, get his first win on the season, and his second career in the trucks overall, I believe, in which both are at Nashville last year and this year. So he gets first. Zane Smith was able to finish in second. So those two drivers, they'd run a 1-2 all night, and no surprise they were finishing that way. Carson, he comes away with a third-place finish, followed by Ty Majeski in fourth, Stuart Friesen in fifth, and Christian Eckes in sixth. You had Tyler Ankerman seventh, Max Gutierrez in eighth. John Hunter Nemechek was able to finish in ninth, and Matt Crafton rounded out the top 10. So, again, we're getting, the Truck Series playoffs are much closer to starting than any of the other series. It's really coming down to where if you're underneath the cut line, points aren't going to get you in. You're going to have to win. So it's now just a question of can any of them get that done. Of those behind the cut line, I hadn't looked at an update, recently a updated points graph as far as who's below the cut line. I know Tanner Gray is, and you still got Matt DiBenedetto back there. And, I don't know if any of them really are going to be able to get it done. They've had good runs. Tyler Ankerman's back below the cut line. So I honestly don't know if any of those guys have shown enough consistency or speed to get up there and get a win, short of, if chaos breaks out in a truck race, which is quite possible, or if they come away with a fuel mileage win. So it's going to be interesting to see how these last few races play out for the Truck Series as they get ready to start their playoffs. So now looking at Saturday's Xfinity race in Nashville, you had Riley Herbst and A.J. Allmendinger on the front row. However, the driver of the day was Justin Allgaier, who swept all 3 stages and got a second win of the season. He gets the win with Trevor Bayne getting a solid second-place finish and Riley Herbst able to finish third. Ty Gibbs would finish in fourth and Sam Mayer in fifth. Ryan Preece driving for B.J. McLeod. He would finish in sixth, followed by Jeffrey Earnhardt in seventh, driving for Sam Hunt. Austin Hill, he would finish in eighth. Ryan Sieg in ninth and Brett Moffitt in 10th. And for Herbst, it was, while he didn't get the win, wasn't able to, start on the pole, finish first, he still had a solid points day with a third place and a fourth place finish in stages 1 and 2 and able to finish with a third place finish. He has now tied, the most top fives he's gotten in a season, just 15 races into this year. His average finish is up 4 spots compared to last year. So he's been definitely more consistent getting all these top 10s and top 5s. So it's been a good season, even though he hasn't broken through to victory lane yet. He's definitely going to be somebody to watch in these next 11 races before the playoffs start. See if he can break through, get that first career win. And while there wasn't a whole lot of action on the track, there's several drivers that had solid finishes, wanted to go over, including Riley Herbst. The other one was Trevor Bayne, who got a second-place finish. And this was his best finish in the Xfinity Series since Chicago in 2014, which was his last full-time season in the series. He had made some starts, part-time starts over the couple of years after 2014. But solid second-place finish for him. He continues to build off of solid finishes with this part-time schedule with Joe Gibbs Racing. His next race will be in New Hampshire next month in July. So he still has a few races left to continue to impress with the results he's gotten and the consistency he's shown in what little he's been in the car. It wouldn't surprise me if he kind of either gets another part-time opportunity with this team next year or could possibly even get bumped up to full-time. Who knows what silly season will bring and how that'll break down. But overall, his comeback tour is still in full swing. Another driver, it seems like I'm always mentioning every race he's run in so far this season, which has been 5 races, is Parker Retzlaff. He finished in 12th. Like I said, this is his 5th race on the season, and he's finished in the top 20 or top 15 in all but one race, which was his first start at Phoenix early in the season. And even in that race, he had a solid qualifying run. He just had a parts failure, which caused him to finish in the back of the field. But still, if you're a small team or a smaller team like Ryan Sieg's race team, you got to be looking at Parker if you want to expand to 2 full-time cars and putting Parker in because he's been consistent in all his races so far. Jeffrey Earnhardt, he gets his second top 10 of the season, this time with Sam Hunt Racing, which is where he's gotten most of his starts this season. And while he hasn't had the best results in that car, he has, been decent in it. So Sam Hunt Racing continues to impress with their, slew of drivers they've had in that car. Another driver was Stephon Parsons. I believe I'm saying that first name right. He finished in 15th place, and this was his first top 15 since Daytona in February of last year. So a solid top 15 finish for him and what's been a struggle of a season for sure. It seems like he's been getting caught up in a lot of wrecks this year. Another driver, Ryan Vargas, a fan favorite in the Xfinity Series. He gets his 4th top 20 finish of the season. He's now one away from tying his best, which was last season where he had 5 top 20 finishes. So he's definitely got the makings for a career year. And like I said, he's a fan favorite in the Xfinity Series. So, it's good to see him get some solid finishes. The big thing coming out of this race was the playoff picture. There's now 11 races before the playoff starts, so plenty of time for drivers to possibly get an upset and lock themselves in. Unfortunately, I just don't see a lot of drivers below that cut line that that are consistent enough to, that are week in, week out threat to get a win. With Riley's solid day, he's now 109 above the cut line. So he's, he keeps doing finishes like this, getting these stage points. He's going to be able to get himself in a pretty sweet spot and locking in on points. Below the cut line, our Motorsports takes up 3 spots that are within striking distance of the points. You have Anthony Alfredo in 13th. He's 69 points out. Brett Moffitt, he's in 14th in points, 72 points out. And Jeb Burton, who's a little bit further back, he's in 16th in points, 93 points back. And he had worked his way up, to be in a pretty decent spot with the points. But unfortunately, it all kind of went away in this race. He had a crash with Sheldon Creed while both drivers were running in the top 20. It looked like going into turn 1, Jeb was trying to fill a hole that, he probably should have backed out and not pushed. He was trying to go 4 wide up on Sheldon Creed was on his outside. He was trying to shoot between Sheldon and another driver. Unfortunately, it looked like he kind of drifted up the track and caught Sheldon, sent Sheldon into the wall, ended both their races. And Sheldon's another driver who came in I was pretty high on, thought, he could surprise a lot of people. But unfortunately, the finishes just haven't been there, or the consistency. He's had good runs and just had things like this, with the wreck with Jeb happen, things really not of his doing or his creation, and just wrong place, wrong time. Both Sheldon and Jeb are guys that you could put on upset alert when we go to tracks like Atlanta or Daytona that they'll go to later in the season. So, it's not out of the realm possibility of them getting a win, but just they haven't been able to consistently run and keep making these top 10s, getting stage points. So they both still have quite a bit of work to do to salvage their season. The other driver in the top 16 that's outside the cut line is Brandon Brown. He is 74 points out, and he's just had, really a quiet year. He hadn't been in a lot of trouble, but hadn't, taken advantage and gotten a lot of points as far as stage finishes and solid finishes go. And, 3 races to watch in these last 11 is going to be this upcoming weekend at Road America. And like I mentioned before, Atlanta and Daytona. Those are probably going to be your races that are, more likely to produce an upset winner. Jeremy Clements, he's won at Road America before. Atlanta now racing like a super speedway. Who knows who could pull it off there. And then, of course, always Daytona is a wild card. So it's going to be interesting to see how these next 11 races play out, especially those 3 races. Other than that, I can see drivers like Allgaier, Ty Gibbs, Noah Gragson really just trying to get as many playoff points, wins as they can, just to set themselves up for a deep run in the playoffs. And now we have Sunday's race in Nashville, which felt more like a marathon than it did a race. You had Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano start on the front row, but the storyline of the day was the rain delays. Coming into as the weekend got closer, rain was going to be a high probability. It was a 70-80% chance throughout the weekend. So you knew we were probably going to have to deal with the rain at some point during race day. They bumped up the start time by 12 minutes. Don't know what a whole lot good that would do, but, they made that decision to try and get it a bump-up start, and they did have a couple rain delays. The longest came with about 10 laps to halfway. If they hadn't had a caution or two or maybe had bumped up the start time maybe another 10 minutes, they probably would have reached halfway, and that would have been the race. They would have called it with Denny Hamlin winning. But fortunately for race fans, both in person and watching from home, they, didn't make it to halfway. They were able to get the track dry in a pretty good amount of time once the rain finally stopped and get back to racing. And even when they got back to racing after the rain delay, there were still at first, some threats. They had some off and on raindrops, and NASCAR kept running under caution, and they passed the halfway point under caution. And it was in the back of my mind, and seeing on social media, it looks like it was on a lot of people's minds, was it'd be something if they run these laps under caution, it starts raining again, and they call the race. That would, be a punch in the mouth for a lot of race fans, especially those that have made the trip to the race. Fortunately, it didn't come to pass. They were able to get the race back going. And when the checkered flag fell, you had Chase Elliott getting his second win of the season. Kurt Busch, he would play some pit strategy and get second, along with Ryan Blaney in third. Kyle Larson would come home in fourth, followed by Ross Chastain in fifth. Denny Hamlin would finish in sixth, followed by Austin Cindric in seventh. Christopher Bell, he would finish in eighth, followed by Joey Logano in ninth. And Kevin Harvick would round out your top 10. And, I mentioned a couple of Hendrick drivers, a couple of Joe Gibbs drivers that were in the top 10. It really was an up and down day for both teams. For Hendrick, Chase obviously gets the win. After that rain delay and when, the lights came on, track, it got dark, track kind of cooled off, he seemed to have one of the better cars, the more consistent cars, and was able to make the most of it, hang on after a late caution and get the win. Kyle Larson, he was quiet most of the night, just had a solid night and finished in fourth. But then you had William Byron and Alex Bowman actually run into some trouble on the same lap in stage two. Williams, kind of kicked things off. He had some mechanical issues where he was off the pace, had to go to the garage. And by the time they get in the next corner, Alex, he would actually get spun by Corey LaJoie and would be unable to finish the race. He would end up finishing in last. And then on the Joe Gibbs side, they were the dominant team all day. They led a majority of the race with, swapping between Denny and Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. And especially as stage two was winding down, going into stage three, it looked like Martin, had one of the better cars and, might be able to get his first win on the season. But they had a late caution with 9 laps to go after Josh Bilicki blew his motor. And when the drivers came around to pit road, Martin and Kyle came onto pit road. They were second and third. You had Chase stay out, and then a lot of drivers behind them stayed out as well, which kind of, negated that pit stop with, restarting with 4 or 5 laps to go. It didn't give them a lot of time to make up positions, and they would end up finishing, Kyle would finish 21st, Martin 22nd. So for two of the drivers, the more dominant cars of the day didn't get the finish that they probably deserved or should have. However, you did have Denny Hamlin, who, besides them two, he was another strong car. He finished in 6th. Christopher Bell was able, kind of like Larson, had a quiet day, finished in 8th place. So, like I said, it was an up and down day. It's, they had a couple drivers that really thrived and came away with solid finishes. A couple others that just had all these different types of issues go on and were unable to get solid finishes. One big story of the race was Bubba Wallace. Coming into Sunday, he was one of the drivers to watch, kind of a dark horse. He had the quickest car in practice. He did have a slow qualifying time, which was surprising. But once the race got started and he started working his way through traffic, you did see he had a quick car, probably more, tuned in for the race instead of a qualifying setup. But unfortunately, ran into some pit crew problems, which has kind of been, his MO of a season. They had a loose wheel during a pit stop. It would wind up putting him 1 lap down, and he was not happy on his radio. He was, going off on his crew, basically telling his crew chief, Booty Barker, don't talk to me. I'm done talking. Don't want to hear from y'all. And at one point, Booty was trying to ask him questions, letting him know, hey, you're doing a great job. And it was just crickets on the radio. So Bubba, obviously frustrated with his car, but with his, pit crew. He was able to come back from being 1 lap down and get a 12th place finish. But yet again, it was another weekend of, what could have been for him and his car. And, a lot of people were going off on Bubba about how he was talking to his crew, saying he was showing his immaturity and, on and on and on. And, people forget how his teammate Kurt Busch was back in the day, how he would, talk to his pit crew. Kevin Harvick, he's known for railing against his pit crew, both on the radio and in the national TV media. So, to me, each driver is different in how they're going to react to these situations. And Bubba's one, this frustration has built up, and finally it just, blew, and he let his feelings be known. Can't knock him forward. I'd be frustrated too if I had a car that really probably should have been a top 10, possibly top 5 car, yet again, and, it comes down to the pit crew, and they just don't deliver. The other big storyline was on the final restart. After they took the green with 4 laps to go, you had Keselowski and Cole Custer get into the wall in 3 and 4. No caution was thrown, and Keselowski was really struggling. I don't know if it was intentional trying to cause a caution, or if his car, because he did make good contact with the wall, if he was trying to fill out his car or knew he had a bigger problem and was just limping that thing where it could. But by the time the leaders were coming into turn 3 on the next lap, he was still trying to gather it up on the front straightaway going into turn 1. I was surprised they didn't throw the caution, but that, he was able to get on the access road on the inside of turn 1 and 2. But by the time they took the white and come around the back straightaway, he was still on the back stretch. And at this point, he had just put it in the grass and was just bouncing all over the place, just limping it. And I'm sure he was probably thinking there was going to be a caution. There should have been a caution thrown. But NASCAR ultimately decided not to. And this is one of the problems fans have complained with NASCAR, is just the consistency. Most of the time, that would be a caution. As soon as they hit the wall, NASCAR would throw a caution, just because as hard of a hit as it was, you don't know what debris is getting thrown around or anything like that. Normally they err on the side of caution, throw the yellow. They've thrown the yellow for less. But ultimately, they let the race play out, let them take the checkered flag under green flag conditions, and just fortunate for them that there wasn't an accident or a spin that could have come up and hit Brad, especially when they were going into turn 1, just because that is, to me, a safety issue. You got Brad going way off the pace, just trying to get back around, and for him, to possibly get blindsided by another car spun out wouldn't have been a good situation for him. And a lot of fans, some fans were saying how they thought NASCAR didn't throw the caution because Chase Elliott was the leader. And Chase, obviously, he's one of the most popular driver, and he's, not arguably the most popular driver in the sport. People are saying NASCAR didn't throw the caution for that very reason. And I disagree with that sentiment, just because there's been plenty of times Chase has been in a wreck, and NASCAR's kept it green and let the race play out. There was a race, I forget what year, at Talladega, where you had Chase and Kurt Busch go into the inside wall at Talladega going into turn 1. I believe it was a white flag lap, and NASCAR kept the race green and let them race back, even though they had 2 cars sitting there on the, inside of, the track. And they didn't throw a caution in that. And then Chase has been screwed before by, back when they were throwing phantom cautions with the debris and whatnot. So I don't buy the premise that, they didn't throw the caution simply because Chase was winning. I think they didn't throw the caution. They had been out there for so long. The fans have been out there for so long. NASCAR, they were ready to call it a day and go home. Right or wrong, that's what I believe happened. I'm not okay with that, just because you don't put your drivers at risk just because you're ready to go to the house. You need to do what's right by them. Even if it had been after the white flag had fell, it would have caused, a little bit of an uproar on social media, but still, when Brad was going the way he was down the back straightaway, all I could think of was if somebody hits him, it's not going to be good for him. So, but I'm not in the control tower. I don't know the conversations going on up there. That's just my opinion. So, yeah, NASCAR is just probably going to get hammered on this one, mainly because of inconsistency. So before we get into our look at the upcoming race at Road America and even some silly season news that broke over the past week, let's point out our spotlight drivers from Nashville weekend, drivers who were able to take advantage of, what equipment they had, make the most of it, and get solid finishes, or able to overcome any adversity that they had during the race and able to come away with a solid finish for their team. For the Truck Series, my spotlight driver is Max Gutierrez. I believe I'm still saying that right. He comes away with an 8th place finish, his first career top 10, and only his second truck start. He was making the start for AM Racing, which is a truck normally driven by Austin Wayne Self, who is out for the time being with his wife. They just had a child, just had a baby. So he's out with her, enjoying that, the early days of fatherhood, and good for him. And Max, he was able to, survive the race and finish with a solid top 10 finish. For the Xfinity Series, I'm actually going to go with the winner of the truck race, Ryan Preece. He was able to get a top 5 finish for BJ McLeod Motorsports. This is his second top 5 in the series and just his third start. And he actually started the race Saturday in 27th, so he did have to make up quite a bit of ground. He was involved in an incident with Josh Berry, able to overcome all that and come away with a solid top 5 finish, and able to continue to prove that he's a driver that people should be looking at for a solid full-time racer. And in the Cup Series, my spotlight driver is going to be Ryan Blaney. Simply because he came away with a third-place finish after spinning out with 85 laps to go. He did not pit during that last caution there at the end where you had Truex and Kyle pit. He stayed out, was able to hold on for a solid third-place finish. And, it was really, besides that spin, a quiet night for him. He had a solid car. I don't know if it was a race-winning car, but he definitely had a top 5 car. Then he has that spin and really puts it behind the 8 ball, but was able to come back for a third-place finish. So now, this past week, we had some silly season news, silly season kind of kickoff with a few news incidents. You had Ricky Stenhouse Jr. It was announced he signed a multi-year extension with JTG Daughtry Racing. So he is going to continue to drive that 47 car for the foreseeable future. And then you had Martin Truex Jr., who it was kind of up in the air. Nobody knew whether he was coming back next year or not. A lot of people thought the way he was talking, he probably wasn't. However, he announced he will be back next season in the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. And, I would say I was 50-50 on surprised by that. Martin strikes me as the type that he isn't going to, he doesn't need or want this big, final tour send-off where, his number's painted in the grass and he gets all these gifts. He strikes me as the type of when he's done, he's going to the house. That's all he needs. And, the way he had been talking, I figured that this was going to be his last full-time season. But then you had Joe Gibbs, who was wanting Ty Gibbs, his grandson, to run. He said at least one more full-time season in the Xfinity Series. So, that 19 car was probably going to be the most likely landing place for him, in my opinion. And that would make, say he puts, he does want Ty, he keeps him in Xfinity for another season. That puts whoever you do put in that car to replace Martin Truex Jr. is kind of in a lame duck situation, which is not an ideal situation for a team of the caliber of Joe Gibbs Racing. Because say they would have put somebody like John Hunter Nemechek in there to kind of keep the seat warm for Ty, and John goes out there and not necessarily lights the world on fire, but is able to get some wins, able to get himself a playoff spot, have a decent year. Are you going to kick this guy out, for Ty Gibbs? Or are you going to would you move somebody over to 2311 Racing? It would just put too many bad scenarios out there for Joe Gibbs, put him in a corner. So best case scenario was Martin coming back, running this, what I'm believing to be will be his last season, and that would open up the door for Ty to step in that car in 2024. Another interesting tidbit of news that I just heard about today, just looking through social media, I haven't done too much digging on it, was Junior Motorsports. There's always, every year, it seems like the past few years, Junior Motorsports is going to jump the Cup, or when will they jump the Cup? And Dale Jr. had a live Dale Jr. download event in Nashville over the weekend where apparently he did mention that, his sister Kelly, who handles the day-to-day operations of Junior Motorsports, for the past 12 months, she's been looking into it. Getting, I don't know whether it's getting numbers, working on a budget, getting an idea of what it would take to run that Cup Series. I'm not sure. But he did kind of allude to that eventually here soon in the near future, they probably will go Cup racing, which is definitely exciting for the sport. It'd be a big win for NASCAR. You have one of your most popular drivers ever and, to move his team up to the Cup Series. It would be huge for him. It'd be a big win. And the question, the main holdup right now, I believe, is the deal where, he's got Rick Hendrick involved with the team in the Xfinity Series. Partnership would have to go away for him to go to the Cup Series. And what's kind of kicked that people really talking is Hendrick's running this Xfinity Series team, simply just under their team name. Used to, you would have, some of these Cup drivers that drive for Hendrick make starts for Junior Motorsports, and that really isn't happening this year. He's come out and said, we're going to field some entries for Hendrick Motorsports in the Xfinity Series. So that got people talking quite a bit, and it looks like they are taking the steps to move Junior Motorsports to the Cup Series. What that does on the Xfinity side, I don't know. I don't know if they keep it like they do with 4 full-time teams or trim it down just so they can kind of keep focus on both Cup and Xfinity. And then, who would you put in that Cup ride? Do you move Josh Berry up? Do you move Justin Allgaier up to the Cup Series, finally give him a top ride in the Cup Series? Right now it's all just kind of, speculation. There's nothing announced yet, but it was an interesting piece of news that I was reading about earlier today. So moving on from that into the race this weekend at Road America, where we will have the Xfinity and Cup Series racing. On the Xfinity side, Kyle Busch, he is the defending race winner, but he is not in this week's race. However, it is still going to be a pretty star-studded field. You will have Cole Custer coming back in the Xfinity Series, Ty Dillon, who's going to drive the 6 car, normally driven by Ryan Vargas. He's going to be in that one. Kyle Larson makes a start for Hendrick. Sammy Smith, one of the big stars of the ARCA Series, he's going to make his debut with Joe Gibbs Racing. John Hunter Nemechek, he comes back to Sam Hunt Racing. Tyler Reddick, Miguel Paludo drives for Junior Motorsports this weekend. And Ryan Vargas will be in the race, but this weekend in the 47 car. So it's a pretty stacked field. It'll be interesting to see who is able to take advantage of it and get the race win. Obviously, some of those guys I mentioned, John Hunter, Cole Custer, Tyler Reddick, are going to be some of the guys to watch. But it'll be interesting to see how they stack up with drivers, like Ty Gibbs and even Justin Allgaier, who is pretty decent on road courses himself. Then on the Cup side, you have Chase Elliott, who is the defending winner at Road America. However, one of the guys I think to watch is going to be Austin Cindric. He's quietly gotten a little bit of momentum going his way, getting some top 10s here in the past few weeks. And we know how good he is on road courses, so he can definitely step up to the challenge and possibly get that road course win. Your dark horse drivers to watch, I think, is going to be, a Michael McDowell or an Eric Jones. I think Michael, he's kind of like Cindric. He's been having a pretty solid season overall and, really playing close to coming away with another top 10 at Nashville this past weekend. So he'll be a dark horse driver. He's, that's where he won his first Xfinity race was Road America. So he knows how to get it done there. And if, say, he were to get the win and, shock the world, get the upset, it would definitely, change the narrative on the playoff standings for the Cup Series. And that'll wrap up this week's episode of 3 Wide. As always, I appreciate y'all joining me and listening along. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcast from. And if you have subscribed, be sure to leave me a review. You can also follow me on Twitter at 3Wide3. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their week and a wonderful 4th of July weekend. And we will meet back same time next week and discuss all things from Road America.